and shine. It's the Ravens Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Ravens Squad Show. It is Thursday. Happy Thursday. We're getting through the week. Training camp is still in full effect. Thank you again for joining us. Myself, Kevin Oestreicher, Mr. Locked On Ravens himself, and Ravens legend Q. We are all here today to talk about Ravens football, and that's what it's all about. Again, thank you guys again for joining us, for everybody listening on the airwaves. Wherever you get your podcast, thank you for listening on there. If you're listening on YouTube, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like and subscribe. All of that good stuff. Remember, we're available Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can always catch the Locked On Ravens podcast Monday through Friday or the weekends whenever big news comes our way. This episode, we're going to be talking about training camp. I mean, that's what the name of the game is. We're talking about a potential return, potential reunion for a certain Raven. I think we all know who that is. That could be brought back depending on what happens in the next couple of days. We'll touch on what's been going on as the Ravens have started using pads more. We'll talk about the difference between having pads and not having pads, what maybe people have seen from different players and different avenues and that sort. We'll talk about the Isaiah Likely injury and how that could have ramifications, and other injuries, in fact, throughout the Ravens roster that could have ramifications as we enter week one. But before we get started, let's talk about Brent Urban. Brent Urban, fan favorite. We all love him. If you watch the Ravens Wire, you know that this guy is a good time. Of course, his buddy in crime, Michael Pierce, has retired, so that tandem won't be there, but potentially one half of that tandem could return, which is great news in my opinion, because we would love to get this guy one more crack at the championship. Kevin, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this potential reunion between the Baltimore Ravens and Brent Urban?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And for me, honestly, I would welcome it. Brent obviously has had a big impact on Baltimore. He loves the team. He loves the city. The team and city love him right back. So I think it makes sense from that perspective. I do wonder, and this is where I'm interested. The Ravens right now have 5 defensive linemen that I believe are going to make the roster without Brent Urban factored into that. To me, 5 is my sweet spot with D linemen. Now, that can obviously change, right? You can get lower than that. You can get higher than that in terms of numbers, and we'll get into final 53-mans, about a month or so from now, and we kind of have to talk about those final decisions. But right now, my roster without Urban would be obviously Travis Jones, Nnamdi Madubuike, Broderick Washington, Aeneas Peebles, and then John Jenkins. So if you bring Brent Urban in, is this a situation where he's a camp body at this point and he's like a practice squad member? Is that where they view him? Is he someone that can be like a 6th defensive lineman? They keep one more guy at that position, or is he in a battle with John Jenkins? And John Jenkins was brought in to be the Michael Pierce replacement, so I don't really think that lines up. I feel like John Jenkins has a specific role on this team. So again, it hasn't happened, at least at the time we're recording this. It's just obviously Jeff's reporting he's going to be visiting the Ravens in the upcoming days, so we'll see if that amounts to anything. But it is intriguing, but if it happens, I personally think it'd be cool, and I'd welcome it, especially because I think there are so many possible ways it could go.
Isn't it interesting when you talk about this team and the makeup of it? It's so deep with talent that you can start nitpicking and saying, well, that guy doesn't quite have it, whatever that it is that they're looking for from the squad as they start to get into the practices. And because of that, I think it puts you in a position where you start to look at who are the free agents that are still out there, the veteran guys that are still out there. And if it is a scenario where they want to go with the familiar, if I'm Brent Urban, I'm like, hey, man, don't bring me in during training camp. Wait until the regular season. Like, I don't want to go through John Harbaugh's training camp of death. I want to be able to chill and get to the regular season where then I know I could play and ball out. I don't need training camp. Let them young dudes get training camp. Put some of them young dudes on a practice squad. Bring me up to the active roster. Pay me my money. We'll be good. I'll make plays for you.
I'm wondering is there a scenario in which you mentioned it? Those 5 guys you mentioned, Kevin. They're pretty big time. I am curious if there's a way in which you can sneak in 6 guys. Did you mention? If I'm Brent, I'm with you. Do not put me in during training camp. I mean, just let the boys handle their business. Let's see what you got with the young guys, and then plug me in a reliable veteran after the training camp is over. But I'm curious for what you've seen, Q. You've been in training camp. How has the defensive lineman looked? Have there been guys that have separated themselves? Has it been a case of, okay, maybe you might need another guy to come in and kind of fill the void with a veteran presence? What are your thoughts?
So interesting, too, because since they have their pads on in today's practice, as of this recording, they basically were in shorts and helmets, and everybody was flying around and the ball was getting completed. But when they were in full gear, like, there was a lot of Lamar scrambling and trying to get some completed passes out there. So the defensive front was really getting after it. There really wasn't a lot of smooth, easy offense like you would think. Now, Bateman, he was taking the vet type of a day the last couple of days. Obviously, Zay Flowers had a little tweak in his leg, so he kind of was shutting it down. So he had a lot of backups from a receiver standpoint. But even with that, though, offensive line, they were intact. And from a D-line standpoint, like, they were getting after it. So I don't know if it is a scenario where it's the D-line playing bad, because the O-line is a veteran offensive line and guys have had tremendous playing time. But that D-line, like I promise you, they were bringing it last couple practices.
I also want to make a point just about the Urban situation in general, not so much about training camp, at least at this point. But with Urban, we've seen the Ravens in the past bring guys in. They've left Baltimore without a deal, but essentially their conversations were, hey, if we need you, you're on our short list of guys that we can call, right? We know that if something goes wrong, if a guy's not performing, if an injury happens, we can bring you in. And, obviously there's the risk of like, oh, another team calls him up and says, hey, we need you now. And then maybe the Ravens need him in 2 weeks and he's gone. But I think Des Bryant is an example of that. We've seen others have that happen in their situation. This could just be Urban's going to come to Baltimore, kind of talk with the Ravens coaching staff and brass and kind of establish some level of a plan. And kind of like Q was saying, like, he doesn't want to go through training camp. Like, he knows what the deal is. He's been in Baltimore. So maybe it is kind of a situation where it's either when training camp in preseason is over, they will sign him to the practice squad, or maybe it's we know that you could be helpful for us later in the season if something goes wrong. Be sure to keep us in mind. It could be a lot of different things. And that's where it's my favorite thing. It's speculation. It's Q's favorite thing too. Don't worry. We always have conversations about what it could be, what it could mean. And we're trying to put the pieces together. And so I just want to say that's another possibility of maybe the Ravens and Brent Urban want to establish some level of a plan that could happen later, as opposed to Urban comes in and is immediately signed. Both things are possible, but that's the beauty of speculation. You never know.
I'm right there.
I'm tired of the speculation, because all we got to do is just look at training camp. Look at the practices. We don't need to speculate. The D-line, we're drawing a line in the sand. I'm writing over the EDC right now. I'm going to just be like, yo, bro, listen, here it is. Kevin Oestreicher keeps speculating that you're going to be making these moves, dang it. And I'm tired of it. And so I'm just going to say to Samuel and EDC that we're just going to tell KO he's no longer allowed to speculate. And then EDC is going to agree with me, and all will be right with the world.
Well, I won't be able to speculate because he'll sign everybody, and then I won't have to, and then we can just talk about it. That's why it's going to happen.
Is this a weird time to bring up Terry McLaurin?
The Bills game, we're going to have the Bills game. The Bills game is going to settle it all. We don't got to worry about Terry McLaurin. We don't got to worry about anybody else who's out there. We're going to be fine. Lights are going to be falling all over the place, but we're going to be fine.
I feel like that was the football gods punishing me for speculating. I feel like that's what that was.
No, you're right. I agree with you, Q. No point of speculating. You're right. I think it's a good thing. It's interesting that the Ravens are even bringing him in, but I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards Kevin. I think this could be a situation where, okay, well, we know you're interested. We know what you can bring. We'll see what we can do for you in the coming weeks. Do you see any other positions in this roster where you could potentially see the Ravens maybe looking for some outside veteran, support in case? I mean, this team is loaded, so it's kind of crazy. I mean, even the fact that they even talked to Brent Urban is surprising to me. Is there any other positions you guys could think of where, hey, maybe, in their back pocket, they got one or two guys that could bring in? I know we talk about safety being the main one, but is there any other positions where you think, even though I heard safety's doing really good with Sanusi Kane and Bo Braid so far in camp, but are there any positions you could think of where they could potentially bring a veteran in to supplant some guys?
As I'm looking down the roster, maybe tight end, maybe. Only because with Isaiah, there's the unknown. Maybe you bring in another guy. Obviously, Charlie Kolar and Mark Andrews, they provide tremendous amount of depth of talent. And then, of course, you got Jaire and you got the other young bull, Sam Pitts. I think those guys don't have quite the experience of playing. So maybe that would, roll the dice depending upon what the preseason will look at.
You want me to tell you some of the free agent tight ends that are available? You want me to tell you a name that's familiar?
No.
Uh-oh.
Well,
No.
I'm going to.
No.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Hayden Hurst is a free agent.
God.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst. I mean, that to me, Noah Fant signed with the Bengals, so that's not an option. To me, like, you could bring in another tight end. You could do it. But I think you could also rely on practice wide elevations. Like, you could, especially if likely in that timeline, we'll get to all that, I'm sure, later in the show. But I agree. Like, it definitely is a possibility, but there's also the other side of the coin where it's like, do you just use Rashod more in line as a third tight end? Do you put Jaire on the practice squad and bring him up for game days and use his call ups? Like, there are those other options. So tight end is definitely one. I would have said inside linebacker, but this morning for the Locked On Ravens, I mean, you convinced me that they have enough guys in that group, especially the younger players, that, they're balling out enough to where you feel confident in that. Now I feel that confidence based off what you were saying. So tight end, I mean, I guess safety is always going to be in that conversation, but feels like they trust those guys. So I truly do think that, save for a minor addition here or there, they're probably done.
Well, who's the inside linebacker that's showing out, or is it a couple?
Nick, you take it away. Yeah, you can tell the people what you told me.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys I like right now. Obviously, Trenton Simpson is trying to redeem himself and put himself in a position where, he's going to be relied upon. Zach Ward talked about him after practice and was like, yep, he's progressing along. It's just about him just knowing the defense, understanding his assignments, and going out there playing. He looks in incredible shape. He looks the part. He is focused and flying around. At the same time, you got some young guys in Hummel and Buchanan. And in particular, Teddy Buchanan, like, when you watch the individual drills, you instantly go to defensive back and safety because you see the athletic fluidity of movement. Last year, when we were looking at the linebackers, you saw a group that looked like they were ready to play back in the 80s and just be a bunch of run stuffing downhill type guys.
Thumpers.
These last few practices, holy moly, guacamole, slowly but surely, them linebackers were no joke. I mean, flying around, athletic, smooth. Like Zach Orr is saying, Buchanan Mike and Will. Do you know how hard it is to play both positions? And he's saying that he's going there playing both positions with comfort. That's a young player. So the fact that you have that versatility and the fantastic. So I think that's something, in my opinion, where you don't necessarily need to even worry.
Oh, did we lose you? Q, hello?
Oh, I think he's gone. No, there he's back. All right,
maybe
cool.
That's him blinking.
Okay.
I'm
So,
here.
yeah,
I think, glitching really badly.
Right, we'll power through it. We'll power through it.
I like the fact. I mean, I'm very excited about these linebackers being good because you mentioned it. The Ravens had a bunch of thumpers last year, guys that just going after and stopping the run and crashing into the guards and centers, and not much really in the way of versatility going out there and covering those tight ends and slot receivers. Something that they put a lot of pressure on Roquan Smith to do all on his own. So it's very good to hear that we got two young studs that could potentially come in and not miss much of a beat. That's awesome to hear, and hopefully this translates into bigger things for this defense. When we come back, we'll talk about the defense a little bit because we're going to be touching on pads versus no pads. For those who haven't played football, you might not notice that there's much of a difference, but something tells me there very much is, and we'll have Q differentiate and discuss it right here next on the Raven Squad Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories of friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I remember once when I went to the golf course with my buddy, and I was not very good, but I had a great time with my friend, and that's really all that matters. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the Bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Thank you, and see you soon. All right, guys, we are back here with the Raven Squad Show. Again, we're available Mondays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, Locked On Ravens podcast, Monday through Friday, with Kevin taking the wheel and giving you all the Ravens news when you can get it every hour. And sometimes, even on Saturdays and Sundays. In fact, I say sometimes, most times, he's doing it on Saturdays and Sundays because it's very, very dedicated to getting you that Ravens news whenever you can get it. Speaking of Ravens news, the Ravens switched from shorts to pads. Big thing for a lot of guys who are in training camp because it means more work, it means more effort, it means you're really, really getting after it. Q, you were at training camp. You saw that transition from shorts to pads. You've been in training camps in the past, obviously, so you know exactly what it takes. Tell the folks listening and watching, what are the differences between getting pads and not having pads when it comes to training camp?
So the obvious elephant in the room when it comes to a padded practice versus a non-padded practice, the padded practice, the offense and defensive line, it's where things ramp up. And that's where you're going to have more of the quote-unquote thudding of back and forth between the offensive line, D-line, running backs, linebackers. The one padded practice, it was hot, it was humid out, and I promise you there were a few times, whether it been Sanusi Kane coming up and laying some of the lumber on Major Jr. I saw a couple of times where guys were just going through and Lamar Jackson was running for his life because the D-line on, you could be a heck of a lot more aggressive and just get after it. So that really is the telltale sign pads versus no pads. When you have no pads, well, now you're not quite as getting back to the quarterback. It's a small notch down. At the same time, when it comes to receivers and DBs, there's less room to hit on the receiver. So you're probably going to have a receiver looking really, really good, like they did when they didn't have to worry about having a padded practice on Thursday morning and afternoon. So they were flying around looking great. So again, it's a huge difference when you got pads versus no pads.
Yeah, I think the big takeaways, especially like when it comes to, offensive line versus defensive line, one-on-ones, more contact, obviously being allowed, right? That's the big thing. And, it's one step closer. Like it truly is. Like it is that one step closer to football. And, I think the most important part, especially with pads and talking about where the Ravens are as a team right now, with the offensive line, it truly is trying to gauge where they are right now. For guys like Tyler Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley, like, we know who those guys can be. Roger Rosengarten, we're all hoping for a big second season, but it's obviously the guard positions, right? You're looking at Daniel Falele at the right guard. You're looking at the battle, or maybe you're not calling it a battle if you think Andrew Voorhees has already won it, but it's Andrew Voorhees and Ben Cleveland and all those guys. They're fighting for that spot. So, you're talking about guys like Mike Green, and I'm going to make sure Q said on Locked On Ravens this morning, he's going to mention Mike Green every show. He's going to mention him every time he can. So I'm going to mention him right now. Mike Green apparently has been one of those guys. Aeneas Peebles, another rookie, a later round guy. He's apparently flashed in pads as well. Namdi Madubuike's had some bat downs at the line apparently from what we've seen and heard. So like in the trenches is where really when the pads come on, like you can take some things away from not having the pads on. Usually things favor defense, and we've certainly seen that for the Ravens here so far throughout the first couple weeks of training. Or I guess it's only been a week, feels like forever, but the first week of training camp. At this point, the pads coming on is an exciting next step. Now the next step from pads is preseason football, or maybe I guess it's the stadium practice, and then it's joint practices, and then it's preseason. So we still got a couple of steps to go, but football is getting closer. I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I want to know your thoughts on Mike Green, because as you mentioned him, as soon as the pads came on, it seemed like that's when things started hitting for you. You started to see the Mike Green we saw in Marshall. We started to see the guy that made the Ravens clamor to draft him in the second round. Do you think it's because he gets that, he gets that green light to go after the quarterback? Or is it more as though just, he's more comfortable, being in pads, and maybe he's more acclimated to the training camp situation as it is? But it seems like the pads will really stand out. Maybe it is the trenches that you were mentioning earlier.
So I think when you look at certain players, you could see where they got that dog in them, that nasty streak, that ability to you just flip the switch, and next thing you know, you playing football, and I'm going to bring it. I think part of bringing it, and part of what Mike Green brings to the table, is the fact that, when you see his play, it's sudden, it's fierce, it's speedy, it's fast and deliberate. Like, my goodness. And that's why I'm like, Mike Green. Oh, did I talk about Mike Green? I think I talked about Mike Green. I believe I'm going to talk about Mike Green again. Hey, look, there's another drill, and Mike Green is in the backfield again. Oh, there's one-on-one, full pads. Full pads means that they're one-on-one versus the O-line and Mike Green. You just went against another offensive tackle, and you got around the edge. He reminds me of Elvis Dumervil and his bendable ways. He's got that bendy, turn the corner with speed and suddenness to his game. And it's so clear and evident. And he's a very much of a disruptor when it comes to getting upfield and making life uncomfortable for an offense trying to find its rhythm.
And I think the other big thing, and, I guess it relates a little bit back to the first segment, is for guys like Mike Green, and more so on the interior, guys like a Peebles, for example, but these pass rushers, they can benefit from learning from the vets, right? Like, I know that Tavius Robinson's been singled out by Mike Green as like the vet that he's been able to lean on with his work ethic and how he goes about things. And that obviously is a huge endorsement for Tavius and himself. But having Kyle Van Noy in that room, Odafe Owe is another year older. He hopefully has taken on more of a leadership role, and he's kind of, hinted at that as well. But even on the D line, like Nnamdi Madubuike has talked about growing into a bit of more of a leader and taking on more of a role this year. You know what? Brent Urban, if you bring in a guy like Brent Urban, that's a guy that knows a lot about playing at the NFL level and can teach not only the interior guys, but also some of the outside linebackers in that room, not only just about what it's like to, be on the NFL field and, some of these tactical advantages, but just to be a professional. And so I think when you have a stable veteran core like that, and you're obviously looking to potentially add to it with a Brent Urban, it helps young guys take that next leap in that next step. And Q, I know you and I have talked about, you having your vets when you first came into the league and how they helped you kind of have things slow down at first and, learn the NFL game and what it took to be a professional. Like, it's really important to have that culture set in there. I think the Ravens do. And so for Mike Green, for Peebles, for all these guys that have those dominant traits and that dominant potential, having vets can jumpstart their careers. Probably it's a bigger storyline than some people might make it out to be.
It's interesting because you look at Chuck Smith and his tutelage when it comes to the art of the pass rush. But then you also look at Matt Robinson, a guy who is in charge of that D-line outside linebacker rush group when it comes to the plays and formations and how to run that ZO defense from the outside linebacker rush in vantage point. And I tell you what, Matt Robinson is doing a fantastic job. I was watching them throughout the week of practice, and it's them locking down the details. The reason why I say that is because Mike Green, you're not seeing him. There's not a lot of yelling at Mike Green. It's more along the lines of, okay, let's just keep doing it and do it full speed, do it with freshness, and just recognize that, yeah, this is a young, talented player. He's learning the game. He has, like you just said, KO, a ton of veterans that are able to give him some little details as far as how to succeed. And then he's just letting his talent go. You got great coaching, like the Coach Robinsons of the world, to give him an opportunity to, in his first year. Granted, we haven't even played the first preseason game yet. They still got to go through a joint practice with the Colts. So there's going to be some learning curve for sure. But Mike Green.
Is there anyone else besides Mike Green who's shown out so far in camp as far as the pass rushers are concerned? Mike Green's been that guy that's been standing out, but have any other guys, even Odafe Owe, has he looked good? I think I saw some clips of David Ojabo even looking some good in some reps, but what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because, yes, the defensive outside rush has been solid. Tavius Robinson, dude has just been my guy, doing his thing. You're not seeing the ball bounce outside from a run aspect, and you're also seeing him there was one play in the non-padded practice where he did a great swim move and had a beeline to Lamar, and then he just kind of slowed up. Now, Lamar does Lamar things and keeps the quote-unquote play alive, but I also believe Tavius would have been able to, a lesser quarterback, he would have been able to get to Lamar, a.k.a. whatever that lesser quarterback, name him, Josh Allen.
Yes, love it.
Lesser quarterback week one. What up? Say something. But you're also seeing, some guys where it's in the interior. It's the Travis Joneses of the world. It's the Nnamdi Madubuikes that when they had their padded practice, that dude was being a disruptor. Technically, batting the ball down when we're talking about Broderick Washington and company too. So it's the entire defensive front, which if you're Zach Orr, you got to be really excited about, because if I'm able to, look at pressure in different ways, and one of the main ways is by having my defensive front just get up the field and get after the quarterback or get a tackle for losses. Those tackle for losses, Jazz is something like a sack too. Put him in, put them off schedule, if you will, when it comes to second and long, third and forever, punt team, here we go. That's something where it can work to your advantage. But those are some of the names that we've been seeing, outside of Mike Green, some of the young guys, maybe I need to be a little bit more attentive to it. But Odafe Owe being Odafe Owe, obviously KVN going to be KVN. He's a veteran. It's just they do what they do. But Mike Green. Mike Green.
I like it. It means that we got some good things ahead for these guys. I'm a big Malachi Starks guy as well. So first 2-round draft picks for the Ravens looking like they're going to be doing something pretty special for the Ravens, at least in the early going into 2025. When we come back, we'll touch on more about the defense because the coaches got a chance to get in front of the media and they had some interesting comments that I think Ravens fans will both like and be intrigued by. We'll touch on the next here on the Ravens Squad Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I wish that I had Monarch Money when I was much younger because I was terrible at managing my money, getting things together. I just know that if I had Monarch Money in my back pocket, things would have been a lot easier, especially as you get older and make sure that finances are a big part of your life. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, guys, we are back here with the Raven Squad Show again. Mondays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Can't stress this enough. If you want to listen to us live, as the season progresses, you're going to make sure you catch myself, Kevin, and Q talking Ravens all the time. So make sure you tune in. We're going to be live on YouTube. You can also follow us wherever you get your podcast and listen in as well. Also Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin all day, Monday through Friday. You get it wherever you can. Make sure you tune in whenever you can for sure. Well, we talked about pads versus no pads. We've seen this transition for the Ravens, seen some guys step up, and it's made things very intriguing for the coaching staff. We've had guys, on offense being maybe a little bewildered about what they're seeing from the defense, and maybe even vice versa. We had both Todd Monken, Zach Orr. We had T. Martin come in and talk all about what they've seen so far in training camp for certain players. I want to start with the comments made by Todd Monken, and he's talking about how this defense has pretty much been out of control. He's had some trouble with this defense, and that's a testament to what the Ravens were able to do, bringing in guys like Mike Green, getting guys in their last year of their deal, fighting for a contract, whatever have you, everything in between. It seems like this defense has really taken this team by storm. Maybe the defense of old. Kevin, you got a chance to listen in on Todd Monken's comments. What were your thoughts on it this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I truly thought it was, it's the age-old saying, right? It's iron sharpens iron. Like that truly is what I believe this is here, where, for the Ravens, them going up, and it's both sides, honestly. Like the Ravens defense going up against the Ravens offense, if you're the defense, you got to go up against Lamar Jackson in practice every single day. You're thinking, man, this is so tough. This is tiring. How this is such a big task for us. And you get into the regular season against quarterbacks that aren't as good, and you're like, man, this is really easy. Like, this is crazy. And the quarterbacks are good quarterbacks, but it's just you're going up against that greatness. You're going up against Derrick Henry. And, especially when the pads come on, and, I know you're not going like all out, but you got to try to make way for Derrick Henry and try to stop a guy like that, or you're covering Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman in practice. I know they weren't out there on Thursday, but then you go up against other receivers and you're like, I can just run with you. This is easy for me. Like, I go up against Zay every day and he's shifting all around. He's going here, he's going there. So it's the same thing with the Ravens offense when they're going up against the defense. It's like, okay, you got Kyle Hamilton. He's moving all the way around, all over the place. Obviously, we'll talk about Zach Orr's comments, particularly with Malachi Starks, and that's a guy that is wise beyond his years. You got Roquan in the middle. We talked about the defensive lineman, Namdi, throwing his hand up and batting down past the line. So, I think Todd Monken is correct. And yeah, you know what? It's not always fun to go against the defense, but I like that he said it's a great challenge. I like that he said that they embrace that. And that, to me, is why I think the Ravens, when you look at their regular season success, it's because they are a very good football team and they have to compete against themselves in practice. And I think that makes them better.
It's interesting, too, because I think when you look at the defense, and one of the points he made was that they're picking up where they left off. The Mike McDonald defense and his defensive staff, it wasn't just him, but his defensive staff, they had that team so revved up, ready to go. And I think for us, the flock, we were expecting it just to pick up where it left off. And it took a minute for Zach Orr to get that defense back to the level. Well, it ain't taking a minute now. They're going out there in training camp right away, picking up where they left off. Zach Orr even said, yeah, the things that I thought about in the past, I don't have to think about those details any longer. They're in a position where they understand the concepts. He understands what it's looking for. He's not necessarily what about this play, or what about this installation, or what about this drill? Now he has the experience. It's amazing and awesome.
Yeah, I think that for me, Zachary Orr, people forget Mike McDonald didn't have the greatest of first years with this defense. It took some getting used to, took some maturation from him moving from college to the NFL. So it's definitely something that we're going to see again with Zachary Orr. You already saw the maturation in the middle of the 2024 season, having to combat all of that, both drama and on the field personnel stuff, to be able to come back and have this top rated defense. Now, Zachary Orr was on record a few days ago saying they're on a much better pace this year than they were this time last year. And another interesting note from Zachary Orr, and Q, you were there today. Zachary Orr had a very interesting comparison for a guy, Malachi Starks, my guy, Malachi Starks, when he says that he has the features, the characteristics of a fan favorite CJ Mosley. So that's a very interesting thing to say, because CJ Mosley was a guy who came in right away and it seemed like he grasped the defense, was able to perform like a veteran almost instantaneously. What are your thoughts on Zachary Orr's comments, Q? And do you notice the same things in Malachi Starks' play, at least on the early going to training camp?
So it's interesting because TJ came from the SEC, obviously Alabama. Malachi Starks coming from Georgia. Both programs very highly rated and always in the conversation for the college football playoffs. And mega talent coming out of both universities year in and year out perennially. So I'm sure it's a situation where Malachi had some studs come back to campus, kind of sit back and let him understand what it is to play in the NFL. And even when you look at Kyle Hamilton and his comments, he was like, man, he's way ahead of where I was when I got to the league. And so that's saying an awful lot. And that's a compliment to Malachi and what I feel is a guy that looks the part, looks ready to go. And it's awesome, So I don't know. I just think the bigger picture is it is a scenario where for Malachi, it's game experience. There are going to be some hiccups, but I don't think they're going to be these massive hiccups, in part because of his maturity and understanding and have a strong FBI football intelligence, but also because he got veterans around him that will make sure he'll be in the right position to make plays.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly the type of player the Ravens needed to bring in. It's a guy that is extremely NFL ready, extremely smart, both as a player and as a person, and someone that I believe truly can have that Nate Wiggins level impact as a rookie in year one. I mean, when you're drafting, it depends on where you are as a franchise. I mean, we know where the Ravens franchise is right now. I can sum it up in 3 letters and 1 word, and that is NOW now, Q's favorite word. It is now that the Ravens have to win. They don't have to in terms of, if they don't win this year, they're never going to win with Lamar. That's not the case at all. Lamar has a long window ahead of him. But as we talked about multiple times on past Squad Show episodes, this roster being as stacked as it is, doesn't come around often where you have a roster this stacked. So you have to be able to capitalize on it. And how do you do that? It's about bringing in ready players, veterans who have been there and can contribute, as well as draft picks. And while I'm not sitting here expecting all 11 picks to go out there and have huge impacts, when you have those first couple of picks, you want to get guys that are ready and maybe have a lower floor. And honestly, I think it's unfair sometimes when people classify guys who are NFL ready and might have like higher floors. They say, oh, well, they have a higher floor, but a lower ceiling because they're more ready. I don't think that's the case with a guy like Malachi, where I think he does have a high floor, but I don't think it means he has a low ceiling because he's already what he is. No, I think he has a lot of room to grow still, despite already having that high floor. And I think it's honestly the same thing with Mike Green, who I'm not sure if we mentioned him before on the show yet today, but Mike Green is somebody that I truly do think that like the floor is there. He can have a baseline contribution to them this season, but there is still so much potential that's untapped for him. It's not that these guys have a low ceiling. The ceiling is through the roof. There might be no ceiling on these guys, but guys like Malachi, guys like Mike Green, they're exactly the type of players that you had to bring in this offseason. And I think they did a good job of that.
I want to pivot a little bit here because Andrew said that we have the lockdown Valentines. I love Malachi Starks. Kevin has Jaire and Q with TJ Tampa. This is just a perfect addition to what we like. Might be to add an asterisk for Mike Green for Q as well.
Yeah, but we have to get 2. I have to get 2 Valentines for each of us.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a pretty testament to what this defense has been able to do. And I wanted to just pivot for a quick second. Just looking at this roster and what I've heard so far from training camp regarding these cornerbacks and DBs in general. I mean, I've heard great things regarding every single DB that could potentially have playing time for the Ravens in 2025. We talked about, Nate Wiggins, Zach Rohr calls him one of the best athletic corners in the history of his existence that he's ever seen, and Marlon Humphrey, that speaks for himself. We talked about Jaire Alexander. TJ Tampa has been making plays in training camp as well. I mean, this guy potentially, if not for the Jaire Alexander signing, could be starting for this Ravens team early in 2025, if not for the love affair between Kevin and Jaire and somehow getting Jaire into the city of Baltimore. But yet, he's played good. Chidobe Awuzie's played good. There's undrafted free agents that are playing good. Q, what is it with this cornerback room? Is it, I know Jaire Alexander's brought a bit of swag to this DB room, but is it really the case of Zach Rohr finally having another year under his belt, everyone coming together with a clear understanding of a goal of winning the Super Bowl?
So I think from a defensive back room, you have to look at Chuck Pagano and the brilliant job of recruiting him out of retirement.
Yes.
I think then you look at Marlon Humphrey and his just being pissed off at the lack of creating turnovers against the Bills. And that devastating loss and that empty feeling in your pit of your stomach. And then you look at the EDC factor of, yes, drafting talented players like a TJ Tampa who develops. And then you put it all together, you got people like Kevin Oestreicher who all of a sudden Jaire Alexander comes about, and now we got to talk about him. And now all of a sudden, Kevin got to make it known. And so EDC goes out there on the behest of KO, and we got Jaire Alexander. So we got a deep room. And that room, I'm telling you, it's like you can see where there is like this chemistry. There's this hold each other accountable. There's great communication. There isn't that feeling of like, I'm over here, you're over there. I don't really want to deal with you mindset at all. And so I think that's where yes, that Marlon Humphrey leadership comes in, but then also the quirkiness of the Jaire Alexander. I mean, he was every single practice that he was out there, he was chirping, and it was hilarious. And literally, he and Anthony Miller were going at it one-on-one. Anthony had a great back shoulder catch against Jaire. Jaire comes back, bam, knocks another ball out, quick jams him at the line of scrimmage. So then, literally, the fans are like, Jaire, Jaire, Jaire. He's interacting with the fans, and he was like, look, it's not a seatbelt. It's a sword. I was like,
I never knew that.
All right.
Interesting.
He samurai sworded some brothers. And I was cracking up. So in the non-padded practice, again, it seems like he likes to go against Anthony Miller. And so usually veterans, when they're working on their game, they're going to go against a guy that they feel that they need to kind of work on their game with. And he and Anthony Miller have been like going at it. And it's been awesome to see. He can press at the line of scrimmage with the best of them and run toe-to-toe with the best of them. Was it? Yeah, I think it was Anthony Miller. I'm thinking of Wade had a deep ball, a couple deep balls caught in portions of the one-on-one, but I don't believe it was against Jaire. Trying to think who it was. It's slipping my mind at the moment. But with that said, like I think the bigger picture is that defensive back room. I think they're saying that they got a lot to prove. It's not just going out there and every man for himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a deep group and such a deep room. I mean, truly, they have so many looks they can throw at you. You know, Marlon in the slot. You can move Malachi down, and he can play some nickel. John Harbaugh talked about that. And his versatility, obviously, on the outside, you have Jaire and Nate, you know, Rugiet, like all these guys, and they all do a lot of things really, really well. And the fact that you have that, and we know not only the Ravens' MO and Ozzie Newsome's MO, you can never have too many corners, right? That is a league MO. Like, you have to be able to stack up at that position, and the Ravens didn't. I do have an announcement, by the way, on a nickname. Sam, I put this on social media. The Ravens put a picture of Jaire Alexander and Marlon Humphrey on social media. I believe it was yesterday. And I said, nickname the duo. And there were a lot of people who provided nicknames, and a lot of them were good. And then I was thinking, and you take the J from Jaire, and you take the Lo from Marlo. It's J-Lo. It's J-Lo. It's Jennifer Lopez. It's J-Lo. That is, I'm announcing it here on the show. J-Lo, Jaire Alexander, Marlon Humphrey. Come on, you got to work with me here. You got to work with me here. All right, Q, you got to work with me. Is this where are you about to say I need the mute button, Q? Are you about to say I need the mute button? Come on, Q.
Oh, man.
It's creative. It's creative.
What do you guys think in the chat? Let me know. J-Lo.
It's kind of hard. I'm not going to
Please, chat. Just give him a couple L's in the chat. L in the chat. L in the chat. No W's. No W's in the chat. No.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
There were a few.
Don't
Someone said MJ. Someone said MJ for Marlo and Jaire. Michael Jordan. MJ. I like that one. That one's good.
I like MJ. Okay, we'll go with that one. I like MJ.
Hilarious. Oh my gosh. Can't get enough of it. All right. Well, when we come back, we'll touch on the Isaiah Likely injury. We touched on it a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, we
didn't get a chance to touch on it. We didn't get a chance to touch on it, but we're going to discuss it when we get back to Isaiah Likely injury and what that could potentially mean for the Baltimore Ravens next here on the Ravens Squad Show.
J-Lo.
Is J-Lo.
Oh, man, I can't stop laughing. Okay, we are back here, Ravens Squad Show. Kevin, Q, myself, we are talking about Ravens football. Training camp is in full swing. J-Lo not included, but, we talk about Isaiah Likely, his injury. Last time we were on the show, it looked like it was a rolled ankle. Seems like it's been upgraded to a small foot fracture. Now, Q, this is your wheelhouse, so I'll start with you. What could this potentially mean? We hear it's about a 6-week recovery time, which puts us right at the cusp of week 1. Is this an injury that could linger, in your opinion, or just something that, could potentially be prepped for and get ready for in time for the Week 1 showdown against the Buffalo Bills?
So, in full disclosure, I'm not sure the exactness of the injury. In other words, is it a Jones fracture where it's the fifth metatarsal, or if it is another metatarsal, and depending upon whether or not where on the foot it is, number one. Number two, who's the surgeon? Number three, what is the stable state of Isaiah Likely? The stable state of Isaiah Likely from a nutritional standpoint, from a recovery standpoint, from an aggressive mental mindset aspect of healing and doing all the treatments, like that's going to be the biggest elephant in the room. That's where you could say, okay, it's 6 weeks, but is it going to be a situation where it lingers and he's not quite the guy that we saw last year and obviously going into training camp healthy? I think this is something that is really going to be interesting to see as we go on. I think it's a fine line. And I think that bigger picture wise, I'm hoping beyond hope that he'll be okay, because it's a contract year. I think he's more than deserving, but when it gets a contract, the business side of things take over. And as much as we love him as a Raven and respect his game, they don't care. Like, it's like, all right, our job is to get the talent as cheap as we can. And so he needs as much leverage as he can. So I'm rooting for him to get back healthy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't rush it. You can't rush it. And definitely from Likely's perspective, but also, I mean, this is what I say with all injuries, is it helps nobody if a guy gets out there and he's not himself. Like, it doesn't help the player, and it hurts both the player and the team. It hurts both because the player is not out there at his full capacity. He's not able to do what he knows he can do and what the team knows he can do to help him. So it benefits nobody to put a guy out there at 75%, 80%, when you know that maybe it's a couple more weeks, maybe it's a little longer than that. I don't know any specific time frame. I know it's that 6 to 8 week, but in Likely's, like, with his perspective, and Q and I talked about it this morning on Locked On Ravens, it's like the way that he plays tight end and kind of how tight end works. And Q mentioned the fact, he's blocking bigger guys and going up and using his athleticism. Like I said on the show, the foot's kind of important when it comes to football, right? You don't want to mess with it. You don't want to have something linger, or you get back and you're pushing it a little bit and then it becomes something worse. Like, you really want to be able to have Likely be back. And this does tie into Mark Andrews, where it's like, okay, Likely is down. Who knows if he'll be back by week 1? If he doesn't, my prediction is either he will be back week 1, or if it's not week 1, it will be week 3. Week 3 is my other prediction, where if it lingers into the season, I think they'll try to hold him out. They might try to sneak that Cleveland game in week 2, which it can get a little dicey if you try to do that. You don't want to anger the football gods, but I think they might try to sneak it and get him back in week 3 against Detroit. I think that's Monday night, if I'm not mistaken, that Detroit game. So it gives even that extra day of rest. So I think that for me, Likely is too important to not be careful and cautious with this. And I think that the Ravens have taken that approach with their injuries in recent seasons. It hurt to not have him against Buffalo, but I don't want the Ravens to take the approach of thinking from a tunnel vision 1 game perspective instead of a whole season /playoff / Super Bowl perspective.
Yeah, late in the year, healthy, ready to go is better than a gimpy, sort of kind of get back into it and then all of a sudden have a setback because you rushed them back too early.
Yeah, I agree with them. I'm 100% with you guys on that. Thank goodness the Ravens didn't trade Mark Andrews in the offseason. They have a, 3-time Pro Bowler, all-time, all-pro guy, and Mark Andrews to lean on. So I think the Ravens are going to be, okay with just having Mark Andrews out there. And speaking of Mark Andrews, let's not forget that Mark Andrews is number 2 in all-time receiving yards in the career. Derrick Mason, obviously number 1 with 5,777 yards. Mark Andrews, number 2 at 5,530 yards. So he needs about 147 yards to go past Derrick Mason for all time in Ravens history. Obviously, he doesn't need 258 yards like a certain wide receiver got in the single game, the most ever for a Raven. Cough, cough, Q, having that a nod for himself. So he doesn't need to get that much, but it is good to know that you have a tight end in Mark Andrews that can potentially be that guy that Lamar Jackson has obviously leaned on in previous season. Then, Kevin, you don't think there won't be much of a loss in production with Mark Andrews taking over for Isaiah Likely potentially in week 1?
I think that there will be a loss. I think that it hurts their offense. I just think that they are positioned to survive it better than a lot of other teams would be. Where, with Likely and Andrews on the field, it opens up so many possibilities for this offense. And obviously we've seen that even with Andrews did not start the year very quickly for the Ravens. It took him a while to and he still had 11 touchdowns on the year, which is kind of crazy considering, some of the conversations that were being had about him in the first month of the season. He really did not start the season fast at all, but he was being he was being a decoy without trying to be a decoy. For Andrews, you still have to throw attention his way. And when you throw attention his way and you have enough weapons on your offense, you truly, it truly is we can't cover everybody. You just can't do it. You can't throw double teams or bracket coverage or cloud or whatever. You can't do that for everybody. And so at some point, somebody is going to be open and available. And if that player has enough talent, like an Isaiah Likely we saw in that Chiefs game, okay, they're throwing their attention to Mark Andrews. Well, then we're just going to give it to Isaiah Likely. And that is the beauty of having them together on the field, that duo. With Likely being down, it kind of changes that. And, that in itself will be a loss. But I think that them just being able to say, okay, well, we still have Mark Andrews on our roster. We can, work with him and Kohler and, whoever else. They're better equipped to survive it than I think a lot of other teams would be, but it still is going to impact their offense, in my opinion.
Interestingly enough, when you look at this dynamic duo that is Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, they both in their times when they have been healthy have complemented one another, but they've both held court when the other has not been available for whatever the reason. And so I think for this period of time, Mark is going to have the stage. And judging by what we've seen so far in training camp, his effort and his just, my goodness, run after catch where I'm a veteran, I don't necessarily need to go full speed all out after a 15-yard catch to take it 70, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that's Mark Andrews. I think for him, he's poised and ready to, yes, prove all his doubters that says he can't do it in the clutch in the postseason. I think he's mentally locked in to make that a thing of the past for himself.
I'm so excited to see Mark Andrews play. If there's one guy besides maybe Lamar Jackson, it might be even more so than Lamar Jackson. I think he wants this bad. You've seen it. You talked about it. His training camp performance, you could tell he is out to prove people wrong. He's also out to get a new contract. Let's not forget that. But more importantly than that, I think he's out to prove people wrong. And there is nothing more dangerous than a player out to prove the doubters wrong. It should make for a great season for Mark Andrews.
The other big thing real quick, I just want to say about Mark Andrews is that, there obviously are the conversations about him and trading and whatnot. To me, if you were to get back draft compensation for next season, it wouldn't have done much because I think Andrews still contributes to you winning a championship if that is where the Ravens go this season. He's still a winning piece. We can talk about the playoff performances and Buffalo and Andrews will be the first to tell you, that was a tough moment for him, tough game for him, and he's looking forward to bounce back. But the Ravens are better when they have both Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. It is a luxury that all the other 31 teams would do anything to have what the Ravens have in that tight end room. So, hopefully Mark can bounce back, particularly in the postseason, but we will see. And I have to say one more thing. I have to say this.
I know you are.
Jaire and Marlon Humphrey. All right. People did not like the J-Lo. All right. I want to say that right now. I got tomatoes thrown at me. I saw nose. I saw everything. But there was a comment on this post I have to read out, and maybe this will change people. But maybe this will change people's minds. Someone commented and said, "Together, they're Jenny from the flock."
Can you stop giving them girl names?
It was not my comment. I had to read the comment. All right. We've decided it's MJ
crazy.
already. We've already decided it's MJ. All right. We've already done it. But I had to read the comment because it was too good. Okay. I had to read the comments.
Andrew says, Kevin, please. And I agree.
I got tomatoes thrown at me. It was a tough scene.
You got L's all up in the chat.
I got some L's. I got some L's.
The business,
all right.
boy.
It was a tough scene.
Terrible.
It's pretty tough.
MJ is the way to go. Yes, I saw the
Don't 10 tomatoes.
I saw the tomatoes.
Yeah, so great stuff. Awesome. Okay, well, again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Always a joy to have Q and Kevin on, as well as the Ravens flock, throwing tomatoes at Kevin and J-Lo or whatever.
What I'm here for.
Jenny on the flock. So definitely a fun time for all. We'll come back here Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time as we get ready. Preseason action is going to be coming very shortly. So I'm very excited about it. Preseason action actually already started for those tuning in live. So be sure to check it out and enjoy a little bit of football. But get ready for Ravens football next week. We'll be back Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also, make sure you check out the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Monday through Friday so you can get your Ravens news wherever you can, whenever you can. He's available 24/7 for that. So again, appreciate you guys so much for joining us. For myself, Kevin, Kadri Ismail, thank you guys so much for joining us here at the Ravens Squad Show, and we will see you next week.